Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'd like to introduce you to Directory Opus 12 Lite, a replacement for the default File Explorer in Windows 10, and compare and contrast the two to give you an idea of whether Directory Opus 12 would be a good pickup for you, or if it's a program that might be unnecessary. So here we have the default File Explorer in Windows 10. If you take a look over at Directory Opus, you'll notice that the basic File Explorer is very simplistic by comparison. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Simplicity can be good. It's less confusing for the average user. But Directory Opus 12 does add a lot of extra features that, if you are willing to spend the time to learn, can speed up your processes and make it a little bit more efficient to navigate around your computer. One of the most obvious things about Directory Opus 12 is that in most of its default views, you actually have two folders opened up on your computer. Now, if you use FTP clients like FileZilla, then you're probably used to working something similar to this, where you can move files from one folder, usually on your computer, to a remote server somewhere out there on the internet. And that kind of thing can be very useful, making it just a lot more efficient to drag and drop individual items over to where you need them. And you can do the same thing here. So if I wanted to grab something out of my user profile and bring it to the C drive, it wouldn't be very hard to do that. I would just click up here on C drive to navigate there. Maybe go into program files or something like that. Let's say Riot Games, where League of Legends is. And copy, let's say, this git config file, just kind of doing things randomly. Control-C to copy, and then Control-V to paste. And without having two File Explorer windows open, we were able to easily move items from one folder to another. If you look up here at the top, you'll notice that there's a lot of tools that you can use in order to manage your files inside of your folders, including copying files, moving files, renaming them, creating new folders, deleting files, and probably one of the more useful ones, archiving files, which would be where you put it in a zip file or a tar.gz. Being able to view and edit the properties and attributes of individual files, probably something only advanced users would really use. And being able to take a photo directory and play a slideshow. So here I have a bunch of photos inside of my Chris/Pictures directory. So I'll just go ahead and hit slideshow. And you can see that it will play through them all. Now, this isn't something that's specific to Directory Opus. It's just kind of bundling together that kind of functionality so that you can use it. Using Windows 10 Photos would basically do the same thing. The same could also be said of all of these other functions up here at the top. The main thing is that it just makes it more accessible to access those. For instance, moving a folder or an item would be really easy. All you need to do is drag and drop it over to the other side. This is just another way of doing it. Same with renaming. You could right-click on a file and hit rename if you wanted to, rather than use rename up there at the top. So one of the cooler things about Directory Opus is that you aren't limited to just one view. If you go up here to Lister, you can actually set a lot of different displays. So in a sense, you're able to customize how you want to browse your folders. So let's take some of them, starting with dual display right here, which is the basic one directory on the left and one on the right. So up here you can enable and disable separate components of your Directory Opus interface, including disabling the dual display, which would make it a single directory like normal Files Explorer. The viewer pane, which you enable with F7 or clicking here in the menu, allows you to view the icons or images over here on the right. Obviously going to be more useful for real photos. Folder tree, which you probably have seen a lot in File Explorer, where you can just see your computer laid out and be able to access important locations like Microsoft OneDrive or your network places just by clicking over here as a shortcut. And then over here, the status bar allows you to get a little extra information about your computer and the files you may be clicking on. For instance, if I click on this LOL Launcher admin exe file, we can see that that's 101 kilobytes out of 203 kilobytes in this current directory. And we can see that my hard drive currently has 184 gigabytes left of space, using up 64% of the total space. So we can switch to list styles such as dual horizontal, where we have a folder tree for each of the folders we're working out of, dual vertical, which changes that to a top-down perspective, Explorer, which is much closer to the default Windows File Explorer, Film Strip, where we can see large icons for the folder we're in and view the photos, and so on and so forth. You'll also notice that when we are working with a directory that contains images or icons, we get this extra functionality, such as the ability to take an image, set it as a wallpaper, to set how big we want the images to display inside of directory Opus, how we want the icons to sort either by date taken, date, or name, and the ability to rotate images between a horizontal landscape and a portrait perspective. Some of these same settings you'll also find up here in the Tools menu, such as Convert Images, which allows you to do things like take an image and change its format on the fly without using another external application like GIMP or Photoshop. Probably one of the handier tools for those who are heavy into tech, which I imagine a lot of people watching this video actually are, is the ability to open up the command prompt in either normal mode or running as an administrator right out of the Tools menu, which saves you having to go to the Windows Start menu and type it in for run. In the Settings Preferences menu, you have a lot of options available to you for being able to customize the way that Directory Opus looks. For instance, under File Displays and Thumbnails, you can set what you want the default size of a thumbnail to be, 160 by 160 pixels by default, the spacing between those thumbnails, and if you want all of the thumbnails to be made into square icons wherever possible. However, for the most part, I can only imagine the most advanced users really digging into the Preferences menu and customizing Directory Opus for them, because it can be kind of intimidating. There are a lot of options here. Also, under the Settings menu, you'll notice that with some of the apps you typically install to a Windows machine, pretty much by default, you can have toolbars for specific things like OpenOffice, Office 365, which are very standard Office suites, one by Microsoft and one open source, and the Applications toolbar, which would allow you to edit and add in new apps that you want a quick launch feature for. Now, what should be noted is that this is just the light version. They also have a Pro version, which includes things like a FTP client, similar to FileZilla, built into Directory Opus. So if you really want to go heavy and have one tool basically do all of your file management on your computer, you might want to consider the Pro version. So all in all, Directory Opus is not a bad tool by any means. I do think it would be overwhelming for most Windows users. Most Windows users probably wouldn't even have heard of it. But for those who are a little bit more techy and maybe want to customize how their File Explorer looks, have some extra functionality, and especially have that dual view that you can set up just by dual display, then Directory Opus might be a pretty useful tool to kind of upgrade your Windows installations for. Ultimately, I think the decision you're going to have to make is, do you like to keep things really nice and simple with the default Windows File Explorer, which is fine, especially in the later versions of Windows, or do you want that extra complexity? So, I've been Chris, this has been my look at Directory Opus 12 Lite. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my future content.